notice Goliath-sized challenges often feel hopeless because overcoming them seems impossible? Self-reliance will never defeat giants. God-reliance, on the other hand, makes the seemingly impossible possible. On this season of the Challenges Won't Stop Me podcast, gain insights and inspiration as guests share how God equipped and empowered them to overcome their giant-sized challenges with powerful God-reliant strategies, habits, mindsets, and fight verses. With God fighting for you, you too can overcome Goliath-sized challenges. Host Melanie Brown is eager to get started, so let's go!
Today's guest is Lisa Stephen. God redeemed her teen pregnancy in ways she never could have imagined. As the founder and executive director of Hope House, Colorado, she's passionate about providing free personal, educational, and economic programs for teen moms, which gives them the tools they need to transform their lives and the lives of their children. Lisa and her husband John have been married for 38 years. They have 3 adult children and 3 grandchildren. I'm eager for you to hear Lisa's powerful story. I am super excited today to have Lisa Stephen with me. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you and with your listeners, Melanie.
When I read your book, A Place to Belong, the story, your backstory is of you having a difficult childhood. Would you be willing to go into some details? Because that shapes the main part of your story.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I will say that that's probably like the least comfortable piece of writing the book was sharing my own personal story. I talk a lot about having been a teenage mom because it so directly relates to God calling me to open a home for teenage moms that now has grown into a much bigger ministry. But like many of our teenage moms that we serve today, I had a really chaotic childhood, a lot of domestic violence in my home. My dad was an alcoholic. He probably worked less than not. So we were on food stamps, and mostly I describe my childhood as sort of feeling like you were always walking on eggshells because you just never knew when there was going to be like a big blow up or a big fight or something that would kind of cause everything to go haywire. And I spent a lot of time feeling like it was my role to protect my younger siblings. I was the oldest child of 4. Very sadly, my younger brother, who was a year younger than me, died in a backyard accident when he was 6 years old. My parents were kind of a wreck before that. They were definitely probably unsalvageable after that trauma happened in our family. So it's interesting to me that now, as someone who works directly with teenage moms, I probably relate to our mamas almost as much or more around their childhoods and sort of the responsibilities that they oftentimes are shouldering as a young maybe they're 8 years old and they're getting their younger siblings to school because their mom is an addict or something like that. And I can really resonate with that just as much as I can, what it feels like to be a teenage mom.
Yeah, when I was reading what you were willing to share in your book about your childhood, my heart just ached. I didn't experience this difficulty and chaotic nature and violent nature with my parents. They fought occasionally, but not like what you described. How did you feel as a child hearing all of that? You read about kids saying, or I guess maybe they're later on in life and they say, I always felt like I was the reason they were fighting. Did you have any of those experiences?
Yeah, I actually didn't even write about that in the book. That's an insightful question. Maybe not so much as a young child. My parents divorced when I was 13, which was a really good thing. It would have been a bad thing for them to have stayed married because it just kept escalating further and further. So it was a good thing when they split up. But I didn't find out until after they split up that my mom was pregnant with me when they got married. So that was a point in time where I definitely kind of internalized that and was like, oh, none of this would have happened if they hadn't have been pregnant with me before they got married. Then none of this bad stuff would have happened. And I think we probably, all of us as children, have some things like that we internalize. And it's not until we get more mature in our relationship with Jesus, where we can see that he has used all of those things, because also none of the beautiful things would exist if they, I mean, every baby is precious. And so, yeah, none of the beautiful things would have happened either.
And I think that's such an important thing for us to think about. We get focused on all the negative things that happen to us, but God is so kind. While we have all of these negative things, he gives us lots of great and wonderful and beautiful and nourishing things or events or people interspersed with all of that. Thank goodness.
Yes.
I'm not sure we could make it if we didn't have that. I think where you were heading was the Romans 8:28, where he works together all things for our good. We're going to get to that part of your story because we got to start at the beginning, of course, where you experienced a lot of unstableness, difficulty, and that shapes us. It just does. I had some health issues at a very young age, and that has shaped my entire life. The things that happen in our childhood, for good, for bad, for neutral, all shape us. I loved the part about your book where what had happened to you that was just negative and negative and negative eventually shaped into something that glorifies God. But we've got to step in between. I want to stop for just a moment and reflect about your brother. You said that his life ended tragically. How did that play into the mix of your emotions with everything else that was going on?
Well, I think really where that probably, in looking back, so my grandmother was a member of a Lutheran church. And when we would go to church with her, that was where I thought God lived, because it was very orderly. And I think it was, I didn't know the word then, but it was liturgical. So everything happened in a certain order. And I'm like, wow, God lives at church. And I had a concept of God being for me from having gone to church with my grandma. So when my brother died, it was an accident. And so we were waiting to get word about whether or not he had survived. During that time, I got my two little sisters together and I'm like, we have to pray because God can fix this. And God didn't fix it. I had this meltdown at God, yelling at him, you didn't fix this, and so I don't believe in you anymore. And then I immediately thought that now he didn't believe in me anymore either, because I told him I didn't believe in him. That's how little kids think. I didn't have grown-ups in my life that could help me to navigate that and understand that. I often say my relationship with God was a little estranged for a little while, mainly because I thought that he was mad at me, that I had gotten mad at him. It took, kind of jumping forward a little bit, probably after I got married and having really amazing mother-in-law who was firmly rooted in her faith through, she actually came to her faith through MOPS, Mothers of Preschoolers, now rebranded as the Mom Co. She was actually part of the very first group that started MOPS International, and she was very influential and significant in my faith journey, as was my engagement with MOPS. She was the one who was like, read the Bible. It's okay to ask him questions. He'll give you answers if you read the Bible. And I'm like, what? So it was awesome.
Revolutionary idea.
Revolutionary idea. Read the Bible, and it's actually okay to ask questions. He likes it. Sometimes he'll answer you. Sometimes it takes a little while, but his words are always there.
Well, I'm glad we stopped there for a moment because I was going to ask about your relationship with God and where that began and how your brother's death impacted that. So you covered it without me even asking. So thank you, Lisa. That was great.
Thank you.
So our next big challenge, probably the biggest challenge that you faced, was that at age 17, you found yourself pregnant.
Not surprisingly, kiddos who grow up in homes where they're not getting the love and the nurturing that they need, they're looking for it in other places. And I was looking for something to fill that hole. And that is a very broad statement, so I don't mean to trivialize. Like, it's kind of a trite statement to say, well, teen moms are looking for someone to love. And I don't mean to trivialize, but I was definitely had a hole, and I met a boy. He was a wonderful boy and is a wonderful man and had such a stable family. I just wanted his family. Like, I joke with him today, I married you because I wanted to marry into your family. And there's a lot of truth to that, because his family like ate dinner together, and nobody yelled at each other, and they respected each other. And his dad cared for his mother during a very serious illness she had. She was on dialysis, and they would do dialysis at home. So she had kidney failure. She's still with us today. She's had 2 kidney transplants, but watching the way they interacted with each other was just beautiful to me. So finding out you're pregnant, I kind of joke that my marriage proposal was we were sitting outside of the clinic in his Chevy Nova, and he said, well, what are you doing a week from Friday? And I said, well, maybe we could just skip class and get married. I laugh now. It was not funny then. At the time, it was terrifying and life-changing and also beautiful. There's a piece of it that maybe just out of pure naivety, you are excited to be a mom, to be a dad. You're scared, but you're also, very naively, we were 17 years old, but we loved each other and we wanted to figure out a way to make a family together. Most of the mamas I work with today, they don't have an example on either side. So if they are with the father of their child or maybe a boyfriend later on, with no example on either side, no set of parents who are showing you what marriage actually looks like, it is so, so difficult to do something you've never seen modeled or never seen done.
Absolutely.
So for us, we were just so blessed to have his parents to sort of model for us what that would look like. And I was much more scared to tell his parents that we were pregnant than I was to tell mine because I didn't want them to be disappointed. And by that point, I wasn't in a lot of relationship with my own parents, but I really highly respected his parents and didn't want them to be disappointed. And I'm sure after we told them, there were tears and sadness and private conversations, but to their credit, their response really was, well, let's talk about marriage. That's the first thing that they said to us. Let's talk about marriage, what that looks like, how you do it, how you invest in marriage. And it was not an assumption in a like, you have to get married kind of way. It was an assumption that we would figure it out and that they felt that we could figure it out. It was a really empowering reaction to a really hard situation.
It sounds like a very loving reaction for a situation. Pardon me, but I don't know your age. I know for when I was a teenager, that was awful.
Yeah.
If you found yourself pregnant.
Maybe clarify a little bit too that I had no idea what situational poverty versus generational poverty, like I had never even heard those terms before we started Hope House. And when I began to learn what those things meant, it was like this light bulb, aha, I get it kind of moment. Essentially, my husband and I both grew up in middle-class homes. So even though I experienced what would be considered situational poverty, so we were on food stamps, we didn't have money, we lived in a trailer, but our family had middle-class value. You were expected to go to college. You're expected to have a career, to own a home someday. Like we were situationally, based on my dad's drinking, we experienced poverty, but it's nothing like generational poverty where the mamas we work with are literally for generations or beyond. Their families have lived on the system. They've experienced homelessness, violence in their homes, addiction, and their value system is not to save money or to go to college. Nobody in their family has gone to college. A lot of them haven't even graduated high school. It's just to get a job, enough to get by. So I could do a whole podcast on that. I should say that for my husband and I, and for his parents, it was an unexpected change in plans. So we had plans to do things with our life. And this was a change in plans, but we still had this belief that we would get there someday, in quotation marks, where the mamas that we work with, that's not a thing. It's not like, oh, I was going to college and now I'm pregnant and that's going to waylay me from going to college, which is what I experienced. For them, it's much more, my baby saved my life. And if I had $1 for every teenage mom who ever told me that, I would not need to fundraise, because for them, it is, I literally, for the first time ever, felt like I had to do something different because I'm so motivated to create a better life or a different life for my child than what I've experienced. That might mean getting away from certain friends, getting out of a gang, getting away from, I have to leave this home that I live in that is filled with violence. It's not even safe for me, let alone a baby. I have to start thinking differently about goals. Like I'm going to have to get my GED or something. Their little brains are just thinking much differently than mine did.
It gives them purpose. It propels them. Yeah. How did your parents respond?
They were disappointed, I guess, mainly from the perspective of, so you're not going to go to college right after high school, maybe necessarily. But mainly they were disengaged. My mom worked all the time. I didn't have really much of a relationship with my dad by that point. I would say mainly disengaged.
Did they become more engaged once?
Well, definitely. I mean, definitely after my son was born. I mean, my father passed away in 2016. My mom has a relationship. We have a relationship, and she has a relationship with all of my children. And I love her and respect her as my mom. But I probably didn't learn as much from her as I've learned over many years of parenting with my mother-in-law, who really championed parenting and how we parent and building into our kids and celebrating them. And those are some of the things that carry through into Hope House today.
Yeah. We're going to fast forward just a little bit. You decide that you're going to get married. You start planning for it. You pick a day. And then what happens?
Yeah, so we literally, picked a day 2 weeks from the day that we found out. And my mother-in-law had been on the transplant wait list. And back in those days, you got a pager, and her little pager went off that a kidney had come in that could be a potential match for her. And miraculously, it was such a miraculous gift. But the timing was so incredibly hard because it literally the next day we were supposed to get married at 11 a.m. and her kidney came in at like 9 p.m. the night before our wedding. So it was kind of a big, meltdown. Everybody's like, oh no, we can't do this. And my mother-in-law was like, oh no, you're going to go get married tomorrow and you videotape it with the old video VHS cameras, camcorders or whatever for me. And then honestly, one of the best things was 10 years later, we renewed our vows and my mother-in-law was there for that wedding. So, and at that point, we actually knew what it meant to give our marriage to the Lord in a different way than we obviously knew at 17. God redeems everything.
Yes, he does. I loved how it felt like it was not going to happen. And then your mother-in-law was very sacrificial and said, yeah. I want you to go on without me. It's important for you to do this. That was the beginning of your journey as a husband and wife. Tell me just snapshots of family life, of marriage, of how all that kind of began gelling together.
Well, I will definitely say that no matter how old you are when you get married, you should, I tell my kids, like, just plan on counseling at least every 5 years, like even just as a tune-up. I don't know that we would have survived if it weren't for counseling. Being married as a teenager, and certainly your brains aren't even fully formed, which I didn't know anything about that at the time, but there were a whole lot of really dumb fights at 17 and 18 years old, 19 years old, just trying to figure life out and figure out how to be parents. And I would definitely say counseling helped. We got a lot of support and guidance from his parents, which was really key.
I thought a very important part of your book was how your mother-in-law mentored you in your faith. So if you would share a little bit about that.
One of the first things that she did was to throw a baby shower for our little son, Johnny, after he was born. He was 6 months old, and I didn't have any friends. When you get pregnant as a teenager, either you don't have healthy friendships in the first place and you're trying to distance yourself from them, or you lose your friendships because if they were healthy, you're just in different stages of life now. So I had no friends. I didn't think about having a baby shower. So she threw a baby shower and invited all of her friends. And all of her friends are what are still today called the Fenton Street Gang, because they all lived on Fenton Street at one point in time. And all the ladies on Fenton Street were the ones that were part of this very first MOPS group. They modeled so much to me of love and commitment and just what does it look like to live out your faith. My mother-in-law was the one who then said, well, you're going to have to go to MOPS. Like, you just got to go to MOPS. That's where you're going to meet some friends. And I was like, no way am I walking into a group full of women who all did it right and get super judged for being the one who did it all wrong. Because that's what you experience as a teenage mom. You literally experience judgment everywhere you go. Even if you're just walking into the grocery store with, your baby on your hip, people are looking at you funny. And I was all wrong. Walking into that MOPS group, they were super warm, super welcoming, gave me an opportunity to be in leadership as a co-leader of the children's program fairly early on in my time at MOPS. Eventually, that was a lot of what led us to where we are today.
I hope I would do what those ladies did for you. That's what God calls us to do, not judge. It's to show love, because if we're judging, then
they're running.
They're running. Yes, perfect. They're not gonna respond to that.
No, and they get that everywhere they go. And you're right. It was a beautiful response, a beautiful way of just sharing the true love of Jesus. And it was an example that we carry today, even today into Hope House. It's just acceptance and love. And that's not something they've experienced. And yeah, it definitely goes all the way back to my mom-in-law and her friends.
That is fantastic. I wanted to read something from your book. You wrote, what most people don't recognize about teen moms is their grit. They have determination. They are problem solvers. They are flexible, and they are unselfish caregivers. It's an indefinable grit you can't teach. It comes because teen moms start the hard stuff of life much earlier than the average kid. They don't have the luxury of going straight from high school to college and then graduating, getting a job, and slowly growing into the responsibilities of adulthood. The way that you wrote that was very compelling. While I know when you face challenges as a young person, as I did as well, mine were health challenges, it does develop something different that people that haven't gone through it at a young age, they don't maybe get it until later in life. So share a little bit more about that.
Maybe that was true for myself as well, having many challenges as a young person, but definitely for the teenage moms we work with today. They are so incredibly motivated to be a good mom to their children, and they could be beaten down. They could be making an excuse. Well, everybody thinks I'm going to fail now. Everyone says I'm a statistic, so now that's just, I give up, and that's going to be how my life is going to be. And that's the exact opposite of how they respond to becoming a mom. It's, oh no, I'm going to find a way. I will find a way to create a stable life for my little one.
Tell me about how old you were and what compelled you to start Hope House.
I loved MOPS. I grew as a leader. I grew as a mom. I grew as a wife. I 100% grew in my relationship with Christ through MOPS, or now the MomCo. And in 1996, they decided to start teen moms groups, so MOPS groups for teenage mothers. And it was right about the same time my kids were getting into school. And so I was graduating MOPS because my kids were older than preschool age. So I decided to volunteer for this teen MOPS group. It was a very life-altering experience. My plan, God did not follow the plan I had, but my plan was to volunteer for teen MOPS, and then I was going to go to college. Like, that's, I finally had my shot. Like, I'm going to go to college. I want to be a teacher, maybe an administrator someday. Had all these plans, but meantime, I'm going to volunteer in this group because I just love MOPS, and I'm compelled to speak into the lives of teenage moms. I joined this teen MOPS group, and oh man, that was my first experience of generational poverty, like getting to know the true depth of really despair that a lot of these moms face. Working with those teenage moms through teen MOPS, we just had such a realization that so many of them lived in unsafe homes and had no ability to become self-sufficient, which they were so compelled to do. And in looking around the Denver metro area, there was no such thing as a home for parenting teenage mothers. There were maternity homes where you could go if you were pregnant, but not if you were already parenting. And that was really the beginning of, well, somebody should do something about this. Lo and behold, God thought I should be a part of doing something about this, which was not my plan. I will often say, so my entire background consisted of working at JCPenney's and doing home daycare. So when this whole, hey, I think we should start a home for teen moms thing came up, it was like, who, me? Like, I'm not equipped at all.
But God had already been qualifying you and equipping you.
And he will always surround you with the most extraordinary people to make his call a reality.
Yes, amen. How long have you been a director of Hope House?
22 years. It'll be 23 years in April. Yes, we've grown from that first little home we had room for 6 mothers and their little ones in our residential home. And today we serve 280 teenage moms across the Denver metro area.
Wow, Lisa. That is amazing.
Yeah, and not all in a house. So we have a campus in Arvada, Colorado. So we still have our little house. We can serve 6 moms in our house. We have a very large resource center where we provide all of our educational programming, from GED to college support to counseling, parenting classes, a variety of things. And then in October, we opened a brand new early learning center to provide full-time licensed care for the children of our teenage moms, so that they can go to work and school full time. And then our big future vision is we are expanding nationally. So we have 2 affiliates in Colorado, one in the north part and one in the south part of the state. And our first affiliate outside of the state of Colorado is opening in Orange County, California this year.
I'm super impressed with you because you were the vehicle that God used and you said yes. I also want to say, go God. Like, wow.
Yes.
Phenomenal.
One of our teenage moms asked me today, do you ever just pull into the parking lot and think, wow, I can't believe that this happened? And I'm like, I pull into the parking lot and sit here and look at this campus and say, look what God can do. It is crazy what he can do.
It is crazy. It comes down to us saying yes.
Yes. It comes down to us saying yes, especially when we don't feel qualified.
Oh, yeah, because he's like, step back. I gotcha.
Yep. He gets all the glory.
That's exactly right. Before we wrap up your story interview, I want to ask you if you have a fight verse.
I love Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, to prosper you and not to harm you, and to give you a hope and a future. And that is the verse we pray over our moms and put on the walls for them to read, that he has a plan for your life. Nothing that you've ever done or that's ever happened to you is so bad that he would stop having a plan for your life and stop loving you and planning good things for you.
Beautiful. How does that help you fight when challenges rudely intersect your path?
It's such a good verse to lean back on when I feel like we're going to do national expansion, but then this challenge happens or that challenge happens, and it's like, oh man, are we even on the right path? And then falling back into that verse of, no, I know the plans he has for us, to prosper us, not to harm us. And it helps you kind of discern, when is it the enemy that is throwing this direction, instead of sometimes you're beating your head against a brick wall and it's God's way of saying, okay, go a different direction. And it's hard to discern, is that the enemy attacking, or is that God saying, hey, go a different path? And that verse really, it helps me to know the difference.
I think it's so incredibly valuable to have a fight verse, maybe even a couple, because we are going to face challenges and we need God's word in our head so that we can be reminding ourselves who's in charge, who's got this. I thank you so much for being on the show. It has been a joy to hear your story, not just on the pages of your book, but for you to share it and to learn a little bit more details that, you can't share everything in a book. So thanks so much for being a part of the show today.
Thanks, Melanie.